Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to take a look at a game by the name of Die Gärten von Versailles. This is a German published game published by Schmidt-Spiel. I believe it's only available in Germany. I was able to print English rules for the game off of Board Game Geek, and it is otherwise language independent. The game is designed by Lena and Gunter Burkhardt, and it plays from 2 to 5 players. The box I'll note says 2 to 4 players, and even the instructions say 2 to 4 players, but there are instructions within the game for 5 players. And the game takes about 30 minutes. The box says ages 8 and up, which seems about right. It is a game in which players are going to be essentially doing a blind bidding to recruit a number of tiles to add to their garden. Whoever has the best garden in the mid-game and the end-game scorings is going to be the winner. Let me take a few minutes to show you how the game plays, and I'll come back and give you my thoughts on the game. The Garden of Versailles is going to be played over a total of 14 rounds, and in it, players are going to be taking a tile each round and adding it to their personal garden, in hopes of having the garden that's going to score the best at the end of the game. So there's going to be 7 rounds, and then there's going to be a mid-game scoring, and then there'll be another 7 rounds and a final scoring. And like I said, each round players are going to take one of these tiles and add them to their display. So on these tiles, there are going to be 5 different colors of features. So, for example, we can see here the 5 different colors. So there are white, there are blue, there are red, yellow, and green. And then there are also going to be 2 other types of tiles. There are wild tiles, like these, and these could simultaneously count as any of the 4 colors, so this would both be a yellow and a white in this circumstance. And then there are these junk tiles. Essentially, they are empty, non-landscape spaces that you could add. So the way that works to draft the tile each turn is you're going to lay out at the start of the game tiles for each player for 7 rounds. So here in a 4-player game, we have 28 tiles laid out face up into sets of 4. Then you're going to take this king pawn and you're going to place it at the start of one of the tiles. Then these are essentially the 4 tiles that are going to be drafted first. So each of the players is going to get dealt at the start of the game 10 cards. So there's 7 rounds. They'll only be using 7 of these 10 cards. And they will then pick one of those cards that they want to play in secret face down in front of them. So let's just say this player picks this and so on. So these players do that, and then they will simultaneously reveal the cards. So, based on the number that the players have played, they're going to get one of these tiles. Whoever's played the lowest numbered card gets the tile closest to the king. So this player would get this one. This player played the next lowest, they would get this one. This player then would get this one, and this player played the highest, so they would get that one. And that is, all these cards are just going to get put into a discard pile, and the king will move on. And now players are going to do that again. And they'll do that for 7 rounds. So when you're first placing your first tile, you're not going to have any real decision. You know, there's no tile to worry about. But in the future, any tile that you collect will have to be connected to this one. So let's just show you again. Let's say each player plays a card. And normally you would think about, you know, if you wanted this one, you might play a higher card. If you wanted this one, you might play a lower card, and so on. But at the start of the game, and for demonstration purposes, I'll just show you a random selection of cards. So this player would get this one, which actually works out well for them, so they might want to connect those like that. Then this player would get this one, so maybe they'll keep their green going. This player would get this one, so nothing really to connect that to. So anything could be connected to anything. Yellow could be connected to yellow, and so on. It makes more sense to connect like colors. But you could also stagger things like that. So one block would be connected to one block, and it's okay to create a gap. So for example, this player here might want to do something like that, you know, and that's totally fine. Then your next tile, for example, could go here or wherever. Any tile could be connected to any tile, but just not connected only diagonally. So something that you're going to be looking for as you create these various tiles or add these tiles to your garden is whether or not a player has the majority of a color. So among all players. So this player here has gotten 4 blue tiles and 4 red tiles. As soon as a player hits 4 tiles, so the first player to do that, and you will resolve these in turn order. So this essentially this player took the first tile, gets to check first for majorities, then this player, and so on. So this player here has 4 red and 4 blue. So they would claim these tokens here, which are just going to be point tokens. And whoever possesses these during the mid and end game scoring phases is going to earn points. So this player would hold on to those. And no other player has 4 of any given color, so nobody else would yet claim one of those. Now later, if another player adds a tile so that they would exceed the number of gardens of a given color that this player has, they would then get to claim this tile. So this player here has 3. If they just added 1 blue, they would not exceed it. They would tie it, so the tile would remain with this player. But if the other player exceeded it, they would then be able to claim that. So this is going to keep going with players adding tiles to their areas. Eventually players are going to claim these, I'm sure. So, like I said, this would go for 7 rounds, and then there's going to be a mid-game scoring. So during the mid-game scoring, a few things are going to happen. First of all, whoever owns these tiles is going to get the points on them, so 3 points per color majority that you own. Then secondly, you're going to look at your 2 biggest colors, or I suppose I would say your 2 biggest continuous sections of a single color. So this player, for example, has 4 blue and 4 red, and they'll get points for each of those. So they get 4 points for the blue, 4 points for the red, plus these 2, 6 points, 3 points, and 3 points. So this player, if this was all they had, which obviously they would have 7 tiles instead of just 2 tiles, they would get the 8 points plus the 6 points, so 14 points. Whereas this player here would have 3 points plus 3 points plus 1 point, and so on. So top two sections are going to score for a player, plus any of the award tokens that players have. That would be the mid game. After that, players are going to discard the 3 cards they didn't use. They'll each get shuffled out 10 more cards, and then you would lay out another set of 7 tiles for the number of players that you're playing with. Then a few things will happen. These are all going to flip over. So they're going to be worth 5 points now instead of 3 points. So you can see that. So they're 5 points. And play will continue. So after another 7 tiles are added to each player's section, so once each player has 14 tiles in their garden, a few more things will happen for the end game scoring. So this is going to be a cumulative scoring. So your scores are going to be written down at the mid game scoring. Then you're going to add to them the points that you're going to get during the end game scoring. And for the end game scoring, what you're going to look at is your top 3 sections. So this player would, for example, get their green section, their red section, and their blue section. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 1 point per block in that section. 4, 5, 6, 7 points, plus the points for any of these tiles that they control. So now it's going to be 5 points. And then also what you're going to do is you're going to now, only at the end game, look and see who has the second most in each color. So this player would have actually the second most yellow here, so they might get that. If somebody was tied, let's say this player has the most red, but these 2 players were tied for red, nobody would get the reward. So you'll check that for each color. Then you'll also check with these undeveloped areas. Whoever has the largest contiguous section of those would get this block, or this token for 3 points as well. So again, the scoring at the end of the game is going to be 5 points for strict majority, 3 points for second place, 1 point for each block in each of your 3 biggest sections of contiguous colors, and then that will be added to your mid-game points. Whoever has the most points at the end of that will be the winner of the Garden of Versailles. Okay, so that is the Garden of Versailles, and this is by no means a groundbreaking game, but it's a game that I think is very pleasant, and it's a game that plays very well for up to 5 players in a pretty tight time frame. You could play in 20 or 30 minutes. There are some decisions to be made, even if you don't essentially have control over your ultimate fate because of the blind bidding system. If you played 45 thinking that you're going to get a high tile and every other player plays a higher number, you might just get that first tile, and you ultimately don't have control over that. But in a game that is this light, it works well. I should note that there is a 2-player variant that does work pretty well, in which each player is going to play a card, and you're going to take another card at random to determine among 3 tiles which tile goes to which player. So one would just get discarded out of the game each round. That does work surprisingly well, which most area majority games don't work especially well with 2 players. This does keep things interesting for 2, and the game plays extremely quickly with only 2 players, I should note. But even with up to 5 players, it still plays relatively quickly, and that's a real strength in the game. Because there are a lot of games that have come out recently, especially in this genre. There is Honshu, which is another game where players are going to do a sort of drafting, trick-taking thing to get cards to add to their kingdom. There's another game I played recently by the name of Pungi, Pungi. That is a similar game where players are going to just simultaneously do blind bidding to take cards from a center row. And this one is probably, the lightest of those all, but it's probably the one that I prefer the most just because there is that tile laying aspect, which is genuinely something that I enjoy and most players seem to enjoy, putting together spatial relations to put, maximize points to get the best garden. That's just generally something that people like. And there is some suspense each round about which tile you're going to get. So sometimes there is a tile that you absolutely want, and you may not have the cards to get it. And, that is something that is, both a strength and a weakness of the game because it keeps it exciting. It keeps it from being too deterministic, but at the same time, it does mean that there's not a lot of long-term strategy. You could see all the tiles laid out for the next 7 rounds, so you might want to conserve your cards accordingly and pay attention to other players' play, especially in a 5-player game where only 5 cards are going to be pulled out. You could do a pretty good job of counting cards, I would suppose. But at the same time, if a player plays a card, takes a tile that you need, you don't have that much control over it. And it does become pretty competitive trying to hold on to your majorities versus other players. You could see, just from looking at the table, how close people are from stealing one of those lead tokens from you. So you will want to compete with other players pretty directly. And you really have to pick your battles because you're not going to be able to claim more than, say, 2 of those tiles in like a 4 or 5 player game. So because of that, you want to always play the table. The game's graphic design is easy enough and clear enough that you could see pretty clearly how many tokens of, or how many sections of a given color a player has, which is important in the game. And the way that the game resolves it in turn order is a little bit clunky because each player has to add their tile and announce if they've taken over a turn order, but at the same time it does work better than it might in some other circumstances if the game was not so clear as to what your objectives were. You are always just paying attention to essentially the color or 2 that you might be competitive in and not trying to track all the information at once. So it's not unmanageable, but it does require some order of operations in a game that's otherwise simultaneous play. So for as light filler games go, I think that works very well. I think it's a game that people would really enjoy, and there's no language barrier in it, even though you would have to import the game. You just, like I said, need to download the rules off of Board Game Geek. I've played it with 2. I've played it up to 5. I've enjoyed it at all the player accounts I've played it with, and it's always gone pretty quickly. I think that forcing players to consider not only the scoring of the majorities, but also the scoring of their 3 biggest sections at the end of the game is interesting because this is only worth 5 points. You don't want to have your whole game based around only getting 5 points when you could get 1 point per tile in each of your 3 biggest sections. So there is a nice tension between the majority scoring and also the largest section scoring for even if you're not going to win a section, especially because there are second place tokens awarded at the end of the game. So it's a game that I think forces you to think along many different fronts, forces you to be nimble as you get tiles that you may not exactly want, and it's a game that I think has an appropriate amount of strategy for its length. So those are my thoughts on The Garden of Versailles, and thanks for watching.